You know that feeling when you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning, replaying a conversation that left you feeling smaller than you were before it started? That moment when you question whether your memory is reliable, whether your feelings are valid, whether you're the problem they keep telling you that you are. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel like you were slowly disappearing, then you already know what it's like to be entangled with a toxic partner. But here's what most people don't tell you. What keeps you up at night, wondering and searching for answers. The person who hurt you probably didn't wake up one day and decide to become your villain. The mind of a toxic partner is far more complex, far more tragic, and far more human than we're comfortable admitting. Let's start with a truth that might make you uncomfortable. Toxic partners aren't monsters. They're wounded people who learned, somewhere along their journey, that love is a battlefield where vulnerability gets punished and control keeps you safe. Neuroscience shows us that when someone experiences childhood emotional neglect or trauma, their brain literally rewires itself to perceive intimacy as a threat. The amygdala, that ancient alarm system in our brain, becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for signs of abandonment or rejection. What looks like cruelty from the outside often feels like survival from the inside. When they criticize you, when they withdraw affection like a weapon, when they rewrite history to make you doubt your own experience, they're not operating from a place of strength. They're operating from a nervous system that learned, perhaps decades ago, that closeness equals danger. But understanding this doesn't mean excusing it, and this is where things get complicated, because you've probably spent countless hours trying to decode their behavior, trying to love them hard enough that they'd finally feel safe enough to stop hurting you. You became a student of their moods, walking on eggshells, shrinking yourself to make room for their fragility. And here's the painful part. Every time you adapted to their dysfunction, every time you accepted the unacceptable, you were teaching both of you that this is what love looks like. The toxic partner's brain operates on something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive. They give you just enough warmth, just enough of the person you fell in love with to keep you hooked. Then they pull away, leaving you desperate to solve the puzzle of their affection. Your brain releases dopamine during those brief moments of connection, creating a neurochemical bond that's incredibly difficult to break, even when your rational mind knows something is deeply wrong. What makes toxic partners so confusing is that they often possess a strange kind of emotional intelligence, but it's intelligence without empathy, awareness without accountability. They can read your vulnerabilities with surgical precision, not to heal them, but to exploit them. When you try to set a boundary, they flip the script so masterfully that suddenly you're apologizing for having needs in the first place. This isn't calculated evil in most cases, it's a defense mechanism so deeply embedded that it operates automatically. Their childhood might have taught them that other people's emotions are weapons used against them, so they learned to strike first, to control the narrative before it could control them. In their internal world, they're not the aggressor. They're the perpetual victim, and you're just another person trying to hurt them by asking to be treated with basic respect. The truly heartbreaking part is that toxic partners often suffer immensely within the prison of their own patterns. Research in attachment theory reveals that people with disorganized attachment styles simultaneously crave and fear intimacy. They pull you close, then push you away, trapped in an exhausting cycle that destroys relationships while confirming their deepest belief, that they're unlovable. When they see you pulling away, when they sense you're finally tired of the chaos, something in them panics. That's when you might see the apologies, the promises to change, the glimpses of the person you originally fell for. And you want to believe them because you remember who they were in the beginning, before the mask slipped. But here's what you need to understand. Temporary remorse triggered by the fear of losing you is not the same as genuine transformation. Real change requires them to sit with the unbearable discomfort of facing who they've become, and most toxic partners will do anything to avoid that mirror. So, where does this leave you? Perhaps you're reading this because you're trying to decide whether to stay or go. Perhaps you've already left, but you're still haunted by questions about why it happened, what you could have done differently, whether you'll ever stop feeling the echoes of their voice in your head.
Here's something that might bring you a strange kind of peace. You cannot love someone into healing if they're not willing to do the work themselves. You cannot be patient enough, understanding enough, or small enough to make a toxic dynamic healthy. The mind of a toxic partner is shaped by years, sometimes decades, of learned survival patterns that have nothing to do with you and everything to do with wounds that existed long before you arrived. You were not the cause, and you cannot be the cure. The hardest lesson is this: walking away from someone you love doesn't make you cruel. Protecting your peace doesn't make you selfish. Refusing to be someone's emotional punching bag doesn't make you unsupportive. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for them, is to stop participating in a dynamic that destroys you both. When you finally leave, they might tell their next partner that you were the toxic one, and maybe that story helps them sleep at night, but you'll know the truth. You'll carry the scars that taught you what love should never feel like, and slowly, quietly, those scars will transform into wisdom. So tonight, before you fall asleep, I want you to ask yourself something. If you weren't afraid of being alone, if you weren't holding on to who they used to be or who they promised they'd become, would you choose this? Would you feel this way? Your answer to that question might be the most honest conversation you've had in a very long time, and if you're ready to hear it, maybe it's time to finally listen.